Bastianello, a story from old Italy. Carlo and Carla, they were going to get married. Now, that was a good match. Carlo, Carla, their names sounded alike, and now they were going to become husband and wife. Carla's mama and papa were so pleased that their daughter was finally getting married. Her papa's name was Sebastiano. In English, you would say Sebastian. And Sebastiano, he was married to Stulta. I have no idea what that name would be in English. Sebastiano and Stulta said that they would give a big wedding party to celebrate the occasion, and everybody in the village came. There was dancing and singing and lots of good food. Of course, there was wine and cheese. But right in the middle of the festivities, they ran out of wine. Well, Carla wanted to show her new husband, Carlo, what a good wife she would be, how she could run a household, and she jumped up from the head table and she grabbed the empty wine pitcher and she said, "Oh, it's no problem. My papa has a lot of wine down in the cellar. I will go and fetch some." And she went down below stairs, and there, beneath the stairs, there was a great big round cask, a barrel for holding red wine. She put the pitcher underneath the cask, setting it up on a table, and she turned the tap so that the wine started to flow into the pitcher. And while it was filling, she stood there daydreaming about the wonderful life that she was going to enjoy now that she was married to Carlo. And she thought to herself, "Oh, Carlo, he's a big, strong, handsome man, and he'll build me a big, fancy house. And then someday I'll have a little baby, and I'll name the baby Bastianello, little Sebastiano, for his papa. And Bastianello, he will not cry too much. And then he will grow up to be a big man, and he'll get in a war because he'll be a soldier, and he'll get in a war, and he'll be killed." And she started crying over an imaginary baby that hadn't even been born yet. It was just a daydream. Meanwhile, the wine overflowed the pitcher and was running all over the table and dripping off on the floor. There she stood in ankle-deep wine. Upstairs, everybody wondered, where is Carla? Why doesn't she come right back with that pitcher of wine? And so her mama, Stulta, said she would go and see what was keeping her daughter. And Stulta walked down below stairs, and there was Carla crying and carrying on. And she looked at her daughter and she said, "Carla, what's wrong?" "Oh, Mama, I was going to get married." "Oh, yes, you were going to have such a lovely wedding, and I was going to live in a big house. Oh, yes, your husband Carlo will build you a nice big house, and I was going to have a little baby named Bastianello." "Oh, a baby named Bastianello, named for his old papa. It's a good name, yes. And Bastianello will grow to be a soldier and get in a war and be killed." "Killed?" And now Stulta is crying too. Both of these women crying and carrying on over a silly thing like the daydream of a baby that hadn't even been born yet. And the wine overflowing the pitcher became knee-deep in the cellar. Upstairs, people were wondering, what takes so long for two women to bring back one pitcher of wine? So Papa Sebastiano, big Sebastiano, said he would go and see what was keeping them. He went down below stairs, and there were the women falling on one another, crying and carrying on, and he asked his wife, "Stulta, what's wrong?" And his wife explained it to him. "Carla was going to get married." "Oh, yes, a very fine wedding. And she was going to live in a big house." "Oh, yes, a very nice, big house. And she was going to have a little baby named Bastianello." "Oh, Bastianello, named for me, his old papa. It's a good name, yes." "And Bastianello, he would not cry too much. And then he would be a soldier, and he would grow up and get in a war and be killed." "Killed?" And now Papa Sebastiano is crying too. All of them crying over this imaginary baby, and the wine is waist deep in the cellar. Well, upstairs, everybody got so tired of waiting for them to come back with something to drink, they just went home. And then Carlo went down below stairs to find where his family had gotten to and what was going on. And when he heard what they were crying about, the only thing Carlo could say was, "Stupido, stupido, stupido." I don't even have to tell you what that means. He said Carla was such a stupido, he would not marry her. The wedding was off. In fact, he said he would never get married. Well, never say never. He did say if he could find 3 people in the world who were as dumb as Carla, he would go ahead and marry her because then he would know life could be worse. Better to be married to one idiot than to three of them. So he packed up his belongings and he left the village. As he traveled out of town, he passed by the village well. There was a man there dipping water with a sieve. Now, a sieve is a pan that has holes in the bottom for sifting flour and such. What are you doing? I'm dipping water with this sieve. That's not how you dip water, stupido. Get a bucket. Oh. And the crazy man went and he got a bucket. When he dipped it in the well, of course, it held the water ever so much better. The man walked away with a full bucket of water saying, "Grazie, thank you, thank you." And Carlo thought, that man was as dumb as Carla. That made one. He walked on down the road for a while, and after a while, Carlo was tired, so he thought he'd sit down under a shade tree and take a rest. When he sat down under the tree, he noticed, laying in the grass there, a pair of boots. He looked up into the tree. There was a man sitting on a tree branch overhead. He had no boots on, just his stockings. All of a sudden, he jumped out of the tree, and he landed next to the boots. And then he climbed up the tree again, and he jumped out, and he landed next to the boots. "What are you doing?" "I'm trying to jump into my new boots." "That's not how you put on boots, stupido." "Like this." Carlo pulled off his own boots, and he pulled the man's boots on to show him how to do it. Oh, the man climbed out of the tree. He grabbed one of Carlo's boots and pulled it on. "Ooh, these boots don't fit so good." "Those are my boots." When they finally had on the right footwear, the man said, "Grazie, thank you." And he walked away, and Carlo thought, that man was as dumb as Carla. That made two. Well, he went on down the road, and finally he came into a new village. And all the people of that village were very excited because they also were about to celebrate a wedding. The only problem was they could not start the ceremony because they couldn't figure out how to get the bride into the church. She was a tall girl, very beautiful, but tall, and she was going to sit up on a big white horse and ride up the road into the churchyard, but whenever she tried to ride through the gate, she kept whacking her head on the crosspiece at the top of the gate. And everybody was trying to figure out how to get her in. One man kept saying, "Oh, I know, just cut the horse's legs off and it'll be lower down and she can fit." "No," said the man who owned the horse, "you'll ruin my horse. Just cut the bride's head off and then..." "No!" Carlo thought, here is a whole village full of stupidos. He asked the bride if he could tell her a little secret. Well, the bride bent down to hear the secret, and when she bent down, she was low enough that she would fit, even on the horse's back, right through the gate. So he led the horse through the gate, and she sat back up and said, "Oh, grazie." She jumped off the horse's back, ran into the church to get married, and Carlo thought, that girl was as dumb as Carla. That made three. Well, he did promise. If he saw three people in the world who were as dumb as Carla, he would turn around and go back home and marry her. When he got back home, he found Carla's papa, Bastianello, out in front of his house. He had a big hammer in one hand, a chisel in the other, and he was banging furiously on a stone. "Papa, what are you doing?" "I'm carving a tombstone for my grandson, Bastianello, when he's killed in the war." They never could convince the crazy old man that his grandson was not going to be killed in a war. So they went ahead and they got married, and they did live in a nice big house. And sometime later, Carla did have a lovely little baby, and she named him Bastianello. But he did not grow up to be a soldier. Nope. He grew up to be a city councilman, which means he never did anything important in his whole life. He just sat behind a big desk and copied letters all day long. And his papa gave him that big hand-carved tombstone as a paperweight. But it was too heavy. It broke right through the desk, smashed a hole through the floor, cracked open all the casks of red wine, flooded the whole village, and that forced me to go away from that place and come here and tell you that story called Bastianello. I want to tell you an old colonial American folk tale. It happens to be the very first story that I ever learned how to tell. We were gathered in a basement at a friend's house in Macon, Georgia, because there was a tornado threatening the neighborhood, and we all had to huddle in the basement, and I was worried and upset, and my mom said, "Why don't you tell a story, and that'll get your mind off of your troubles." We were sitting there by candlelight, and so this is the story that I'd told. Once there was a terrible storm. Lightning flashing across the sky. The roadways were rivers of mud. And there was a man traveling along the road who got caught out in that weather, and he was looking for shelter. Well, he saw a little house next to the side of the road with a candle burning in the window. In those days, if you lit a candle and set it up in the windowsill, it was a signal to travelers that you had a place where they could lodge. So he ran right over to the house and he knocked on the door, and little old lady came to the door and she said,
Yes? What do you want? How can I help you?
and the man said, well, I got caught in the storm and I'm looking for shelter. Do you take in lodgers?
Oh, yes, we take in lodgers. Here, take this candle and go right up above stairs. You'll find a room on the left. You can sleep there, and in the morning I'll call you for breakfast. Good night.
So the man took the candle, he thanked the woman for her hospitality, and he went up above stairs, and sure enough, there on the left there was a fine room with a great big bed. He set the candle on a little table right by the door, crossed the room, shucked his breeches, and dressed in his big long nightshirt. He climbed right up in the bed and he pulled the covers right up to his chin, but he couldn't go to sleep because he had forgotten to put out the light, and the bright candlelight was keeping him awake. But he hated to climb out of that nice warm bed and tiptoe across the floor barefoot. He might catch his death of a cold. And so he called for the old woman. And when she came into the room, he said, I forgot to put out the light. Could you do me the favor?
Oh, no trouble at all, sir. I'm happy to oblige you. I'll just blow it right out. Oh, for heaven's sake. Well, I never saw...
That lady was so old, and her mouth was so drawn up, she could no longer blow straight at a candle flame. All the air went whoop, right down her nightgown.
Oh, for heaven's sake. Let me call my husband. He'll be able to help us. Husband!
A little old man came running into the room. He had a long nightcap hanging down by his left ear, and he said, Yes, good woman, how may I help you?
Oh, we're trying to blow out this candle. Can't seem to get it to go out. Don't know what in the world is wrong with it.
Silly women, they never are very good at these mechanical kind of things. I can blow out a candle. That old man had dipped snuff once too often. He had poked his bottom lip full of tobacco so many times that now his bottom lip pooched out so far he could no longer blow straight at the candle flame, and all the air went right up his nose. Oh, for heaven's sake, let me call my son. Son! A little boy came running in the room, his nightshirt flapping about his knees. Yes, Papa, you called for me? And we're trying to blow this candle out. Can't seem to get it go out at all. I tried 3 times to blow it out.
That's true. I tried as well. It's the most vexing difficulty.
I can blow out a candle. That boy was a brawler. He had gotten into a fight at the schoolhouse, and somebody had poked him one in the jaw, and now his mouth was crooked, and he could no longer blow straight at the candle flame. Oh, I'll call my sister. She'll set this straight. Sister! A little girl came running in.
Yes, dear brother, how can I help you?
We're trying to blow this candle out. Can't seem to get it go out at all. I've tried and tried and tried. That too, tried 3 times to blow the darn thing out. Won't go out at all.
I tried as well. Oh, silly folk, I can blow out a candle.
That girl was such a gossip, so used to talking out one side of her mouth, she could no longer blow straight at a candle flame. Well, wasn't this a fine kettle of fish? There stood the whole family, huffing and puffing and blowing like a bunch of bellows. Finally, the man under the covers had seen enough of their efforts. Oh, for heaven's sake! He jumped out of bed, ran across the room, grabbed up the candle snuffer, and snuffed it. And that just goes to show you what a college education can do for a fellow. I hope you have the great pleasure of visiting with your grandmother. I used to enjoy visiting with my grandmother so much that I decided to adopt extra ones. I adopted 12 grandmas and grandpas, babushkas and dedushkas, from Russia. They were immigrants to the United States, and I was their English teacher. And we used to trade services. I would teach them how to speak better English, and they would teach me Russian fairy tales. I want to tell you our particular favorite. Spokojnej noci to you. Good night. Spokojnej noci means good night, good night. A long time ago in old Russia, Every child knew Spokojnej Noci just like we know Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And in the evening, Sasha's papa would always sing her to sleep with Spokojnej Noci. But in the morning, it was a different story. Papa was a woodcutter and he would leave very early to chop trees in the forest. And then Sasha's hateful stepmother was in charge. Sasha, scrub these floors. Sasha, wash the windows. Sasha, iron the clothes. But I ironed the clothes yesterday, and you're going to iron them again. Sasha never got a chance to play, not even for a second. One day the hateful stepmother said, Sasha, I'm going to make you a new dress. You'll have to fetch me a needle and a spool of thread. Sasha thought it strange that this woman would want to make her anything, but she didn't question it. She just ran to the cupboard to fetch the needle and the spool of sewing thread, and the woman said, No, not that needle and thread. I'm going to send you on the path into the dark forest to my sister's house for a very special needle and thread. But Papa says we're not to go into the forest. There are wolves there. Ah, Papa Schmappa, he's not here. You'll do what I say. Sasha knew the woman was trying to get rid of her, and so she started to stall for time. If I'm going into the forest, I might be gone a while. Maybe I should take something to eat? Here, you can have this. And the woman gave Sasha a crust of bread, but it was covered in green mold. You couldn't eat it. It was ruined. If I had some butter, maybe I could make it taste better. Here. She gave her a little pot of butter, but it too was rancid, smelled terrible. If I had some meat, perhaps I could make a sandwich. You can have this and stop asking for things. And the woman gave Sasha an old dry bone. It didn't even have any meat on it. But Sasha did not complain. She just took these items and put them into her kerchief and tied the corners of her kerchief up like a little lunch bag and started off down the path into the heart of the dark forest. The trees had grown so thickly over the path that it blocked her way. And Sasha looked at the trees and said, My goodness, these trees, they're so dark and thick. They need some sort of a decoration. And she reached behind herself and untied her red hair ribbon. And using the ribbon, she made a bow on one of the tree's branches, kind of like decorating a Christmas tree. And as soon as the tree had a decoration, it lifted its branches high into the air, and all the other trees followed, so that Sasha could see a clear way right into the middle of the forest, where stood the strangest house that Sasha had ever seen. The house had a doorway right in the front and two windows on either side, and the windows were opening and closing and opening and closing, like two eyes blinking in the shadows of the forest. And the most curious thing about the house was that it stood up on big yellow chicken feet. Every time you started toward the house, it would turn this way or that. Finally, Sasha yelled, Stop! And the house stood right up on its big chicken toes. Sasha reached to the iron gate, and when she pushed it open, it creaked on rusty hinges. My goodness, said Sasha, this gate needs some oil. She didn't have any oil, but she did have some rancid butter that wasn't good for eating, so she took out the little pot of butter from her kerchief and she rubbed the butter on the hinges of the gate. Now when she pushed it open, it didn't creak at all. She walked into the yard, and she was just about to put her foot on the front porch steps when all of a sudden, a big black dog came running out from underneath the house and tried to bite her. Sasha grabbed the bone and threw it to the dog and then ran inside and slammed the door. Sitting in a rocking chair was the ugliest old woman Sasha had ever seen. Her head was all tied up in a kerchief like a babushka, like a grandmother, but when she smiled, her teeth were made of black iron. Come in, come in. I am Sasha, and I'm to ask you for a needle and some thread. Oh, yes, needle and thread. Needle and thread, yes. Go right into the next room. You'll find a tub full of soapy water. I want you to get into the tub and take a bath. But I'm not dirty. I've just been walking on the path in the forest. No, you don't understand. Needle and thread. It's a secret signal. When my sister sends a child to ask for needle and thread, she's letting me know that she's sending me my supper. I'm going to cook you in my best copper pot, and I don't want any dirt in it, so get in there and take a bath. Now Sasha knew exactly where she was. A house that stood up on chicken feet, A woman with black iron teeth? This was the home of Baba Yaga, the wicked witch who will gobble you up. She ran into the next room and slammed the door behind her. Sure enough, there was a big tub full of soapy water, but Sasha wasn't about to get into it. Just then, a kitty cat outside of the house jumped up into the window and jumped down into the floor. My goodness, said Sasha. This cat is so skinny it's half starved. You could see the cat's rib bones just beneath its fur. Sasha reached into her kerchief and took out the crust of bread and gave it to the cat. The cat blinked his big yellow eyes and he said,
Sasha, Sasha, this is the home of Baba Yaga, and you must get away. She will eat you. You must run.
And the cat gave Sasha a silver mirror. Sasha climbed out the window. There was the big black dog laying in the yard, chewing on his bone. And he said, Sasha, Sasha, it is Baba Yaga. She is a wicked witch. You must run, run. And the dog gave Sasha a hair comb. Sasha ran to the gate. It swung open silently, and the trees started to point this way and that, helping Sasha know which path to take to get home. Meanwhile, old Baba Yaga was sitting in her rocking chair, waiting for Sasha to take a bath. She called to the closed door. Are you still taking a bath? Now the cat wanted to help Sasha escape, so he splashed his paw in the soapy water and called back, Yes! Are you still taking a bath?
Yes.
Finally, old Baba Yaga grew tired of waiting, and she ran to the door and flung it open. There was no girl in the bathtub, just a cat splashing his paw in the soapy water. Why didn't you tell me Sasha was getting away? Because, said the cat, you never feed me. I'm half starved. Sasha gave me a scrap of bread. She's my friend. I want to help her. She jumped out the window. There was the big black dog laying in the yard, chewing on a bone. Miserable mutt! Why didn't you bite Sasha and keep her here? Because, said the dog, you kick me and are hateful to me. Sasha's my friend, and I wanted to help her. She ran to the gate. Worthless ironwork! Why didn't you screech and let me know Sasha was getting out of the yard? But the gate said nothing. Sasha had put butter on its hinges, and so now it was silent. With her great magic, Baba Yaga flew through the forest, and in moments she was right behind Sasha. She reached out to grab her, but Sasha took the silver mirror that the cat had given her, and she threw it into the air. And when the mirror struck the ground, out from that place spread a huge silver lake. Baba Yaga could not cross that lake water without a boat. She ran home and grabbed her bathtub, ripped it right up out of the floor, dashed the water out, climbed inside, and whoosh, went straight across. Soon she was right behind Sasha again. She reached out to grab her, but this time Sasha took the hair comb the dog had given her and threw it into the air, and when the comb struck the ground, up from that place sprang many, many trees, growing as close together as teeth on a comb, and Baba Yaga was trapped as if she were in a jail. Sasha ran for home. Her papa was there waiting for her. And when he learned what that horrible stepmother had tried to do, he chased that awful woman away. They heard her say she didn't care. She would just run into the forest to her sister Baba Yaga's house. But whether she ever made it or was eaten by a wolf or a bear, we do not know. What we do know is this. If you're traveling on a path in the dark forest and you come upon a little house and you hear a voice from inside singing Spokoni noci, good night, go right in there. That is Sasha's papa. He is a kind man and he will help you. But if you stumble on a house that stands up on big yellow chicken feet, run. It is the home of Baba Yaga. Unanana was a Zulu. She lived in South Africa, and she was a very beautiful woman. Unanana had 2 children, a beautiful boy and a beautiful girl. Whenever she would walk through the village with her children, people would say, "Oh, Unanana, you have such beautiful children." And she would always stand proud and tall and say, "Thank you." Unanana was very smart. She found a perfect place for building a home for her children. All of the high grass was mashed down flat, and she thought, this will make a good yard where my children can play. But the people of the village said, Unanana, you should not build your house there. That is the elephant's road. That is why all the grass is mashed down flat. He walks there every day. And if you build your house in the middle of the elephant's road, he might eat your children. But Unanana was not afraid, and so she built a very fine house. After her house was done, Unanana decided that she would go into the forest to dig yams so that she could roast them in the fire for her children's supper. And while she was gone, she left Big Cousin in charge of the boy and girl. Big Cousin was not the person to leave in charge of children. She was very lazy. All she did was lay under a shade tree and fan herself with a great big banana leaf all day long while the children played in the yard. While the children were playing, a great cat, a lion, came prowling down the road. Rawr, rawr. And the cat stopped and said, "Whose children are those?" And Big Cousin told the lion, "They are Unanana's children. She is away in the forest digging yams, and I am watching them." "I would not let them play there," said the cat. "This is the elephant's road, and those children look good enough to eat." "Nah." She went right on fanning herself, and the lion prowled away. In a little while, an antelope came jumping by. Boing, boing, boing. All of a sudden, the antelope stopped, and he looked at the children, and he said, "Oh, whose children are those?" And Big Cousin told him, "They are Unanana's children. She is away in the forest digging yams, and I am watching them." "I would not let them play here," said the antelope. "Those children are standing in the middle of the elephant's road, and they look good enough to carry away." "Nah." She went right on fanning herself, and the antelope bounced away. Soon enough, Big Cousin was sound asleep. She was laying under that shade tree with the big banana leaf resting right across her eyes. She did not hear the great elephant come walking down his road. Boom, boom, boom. The elephant stopped and pointed with his big long trunk, and he said, "Whose children are those?" Well, the boy and girl didn't know what to do. They were just standing there looking. And Big Cousin didn't say anything. She was sound asleep. And so the elephant reached out with his big long trunk. He wrapped it round the waist of the beautiful boy, lifted him high into the air, and goomp, swallowed him whole. Then he reached out his long trunk again, wrapped it round the waist of the beautiful girl, lifted her high into the air, and goomp, swallowed her whole. And then he went walking, boom, 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 down his road. When Unanana came home, she was balancing on her head a great big basket full of yams, but she could not find her children. She shook Big Cousin awake. Big Cousin said she didn't know anything. She had been asleep. The people of the village said, "Unanana, we told you not to build your house there. The elephant's road, he probably ate them." "Did he swallow them whole?" asked Unanana. We do not know. We were afraid to look." But Unanana was not afraid. She built a big fire, and she roasted the sweet potatoes in the fire. After they had cooled, she stacked them back in the basket and balanced the basket on her head, and she went walking down the road. In a little while, she came to a lion laying in the dirt by the side of the road, and she asked the lion, "My name is Unanana. Have you seen the elephant that ate my beautiful children?" And the lion said, "Oh, if you want to see an elephant, you must keep walking until you come to big white stones." So Unanana kept walking. Eventually, she saw an antelope standing by the side of the road eating weeds, and she asked the antelope, "My name is Unanana. Have you seen the elephant that ate my beautiful children?" And the antelope said, "Oh, if you want to see an elephant, you must keep walking until you come to a big purple mountain." So she continued. Finally, at last, Unanana came to a place where there were big white stones on either side of the road, and in the distance you could see a tall mountain that looked purple in the haze. She knew the elephant must be close by, and then she heard him. He was asleep behind some trees by the side of the road, snoring very loudly. Unanana walked right up to the big sleeping elephant, and she said, "My name is Unanana. Are you the elephant that ate my beautiful children?" The elephant didn't even wake up. And so she spoke louder and she said, "My name is Unanana. Are you the elephant that ate my beautiful children?" He slept right on. And then very loudly she said, "My name is Unanana. Are you the elephant that ate my beautiful children?" And when the elephant woke up, he reached out his big long trunk, he wrapped it round the waist of the beautiful Unanana, lifted her high into the air, and goop, swallowed her whole. As soon as Unanana was inside the elephant's stomach, she wasted no time looking for her children. But it was very dark, and she had to feel her way around. She bumped into something. Oh, that was not her children. It was a dog. She bumped into something else. Oh, that was not her children. It was a goat. And then she felt of something very big. It was a horse. My goodness, this elephant was hungry. And then she found her boy and girl. They were sitting in the darkest corner of the elephant's stomach, looking very frightened. "Do not be afraid," said Unanana. "I have come for you. Are you hungry?" "Yes," said the boy and girl. "We've been sitting in this elephant's stomach with nothing to eat." Unanana took the basket of sweet potatoes, the yams, down from her head, and she gave some of them to the boy and some to the girl. And then they shared the leftovers, the extra, with the dog and the goat and the horse. "Now," said Unanana, "our stomachs are full, we've had a good meal, we are all together. We should have a dance." And Unanana jumped out into the middle of the elephant's stomach and started clapping her hands and stomping her feet, and the elephant said, "Oh, stop dancing around down there." "Oh no," said Unanana, "we cannot stop. We are all together and we are happy and we must have a dance." And she kept right on clapping her hands and stomping her feet and running round and round in the elephant's stomach. The boy and the girl were running around too. "Oh, stop dancing around! You're killing me!" "Oh no," said Unanana, "we are not killing you, but it could come to that." The goat, the horse, the dog were all running round and round. The boy and the girl were dancing. Unanana was clapping her hands. "Oh, get out of my stomach. Get out of my stomach any way you can." "All right," said Unanana, "as you wish." She drew a long machete knife from her belt and cut a big hole in the side of the elephant's stomach. And then she had to work very hard to lift up his big, flabby fat. Out walked the dog, the goat, the horse, the boy, the girl. She took them all home to her house. The elephant had to lay on his side for several days, but he was glad to have all those dancing people out of his stomach. Now Unanana has a dog to guard her children, a goat to give them milk, a horse they can ride to the market. She is very rich, and she still lives right there in the middle of the elephant's road. Sometimes people ask me, "Where did you learn all of these stories?" Well, as you can imagine, if you ask a storyteller that, he will answer with a story. So here you go. Once there was this old lady out working in her garden, and she got real hot and thirsty and she needed a drink of water. So she took her dipping gourd and went down to the river. Y'all know what a dipping gourd is? You know what a pumpkin is, right? A big old orange squash. Well, a dipping gourd is a squash, only excepting it ain't big and round and orange like a pumpkin. It's got a long skinny neck and a fat bottom. Kind of like a girl I knew once. Long skinny neck and a fat bottom. And you slice that thing in two after it's dried out, and it looks like a great big old spoon. You can use it to dip water and things with. Well, she had her a dipping gourd, and she went down there to the river to get her a drink, and she dropped her dipping gourd on a big old flat rock and busted it all to pieces. And that old woman, she said, "Well, now look there. I dropped my dipping gourd and broke it up. I need me a new one." Well, she had some green gourds growing on a vine along the fence, but you ain't never supposed to pick a green gourd offen of the vine. You know why? On account of that thing'll witch you. And she said, "That don't make no never mind to me." And she went over there and yanked the green gourd right off the vine, took it in the house and set it up on the shelf above the fireplace to dry out. Well, that night she is a-setting there in front of the fireplace, warming her feet, and all of a sudden that gourd, on account of his witched, it just jumped right off the shelf and landed in the floor. And she said, "Aw, now you gotta stay where I put you." And she picked it up and set it back up there on the shelf. And all of a sudden that thing just jumped right off again and landed in the floor. And she said, "Ooh, now you're making me mad." And she reached over and she's going to grab up that gourd by the neck and give it a good shaking. But on account that thing was witched, it jumped up off the floor and started beating that old granny in the backside. And she went running down the road yelling, "Oh, oh, 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 oh." She run to Mr. Groundhog's house. She busted through the front door of Mr. Groundhog's house, and that little old groundhog, he said, "Oh, hello, Granny. You scared me to death. Startled me there. For a minute, I thought I'd seen my shadow. Sit down. I'll make us a pot of sassafras tea." She said, "I ain't got time for no sassafras tea. There's a gourd that's witched me, and it's a beating me in my backside. I gotta get shed of it. I'm gonna hunker down behind the door, and when that gourd comes in, you box it for me." So she hunkered down behind the door to hide, and that little old groundhog, he got ready. Did you know that they also call a groundhog a whistle pig? And folks up north call them a woodchuck. Did you know that? Yeah, that's true. You know where I learned that? In a book in the library. That gourd come in and whopped that old groundhog in the head and boxed him round the ears and thumped him in the ribs, and he was going, "Oh, ow, oh, ow, ow, ow." And then it lit on that granny, chased her out from behind the door, and down the road they went, "Ow, ow, oh, ow, ow, ow." She run down the road a ways till she come to Mr. Fox's house. She busted through the door, and the fox said, "Oh, hello, Granny. Have you been baking some of them gingerbread men cookies I like so good?" She said, "No, I ain't had time to bake no gingerbread men cookies. They's a gourd that's witched me. It's a beating me in my backside. I gotta get shed of it. I'm gonna hunker down behind the door and hide, and when that gourd comes in, you bite it for me." So that old fox, he got ready. Did you know a fox, the red fox, can climb a tree like a cat? Yeah, he can. You know where I learned that? In a book in the library. And that gourd come in and whopped that old fox right on the nose, and he was going, "Ow, ow, ow, ow." And then it chased that granny down the road. "Oh, oh, oh." She run to a wildcat's house, busted through the front door of the wildcat's house. That old wildcat, he said, "Oh, Granny, what you doing around here?" She said, "That's a gourd. It witched me. It's a beating me in my backside. I gotta get shed of it. I'm gonna hunker down behind the door, and you scratch it to pieces when it comes in for me." And that old wildcat, he was ready. You know, them wildcats, they got that little short stump of a tail. They call him a bobcat on account of it. You know where I learned that? In a book in the library. And that gourd come in and whopped that old cat in the head, and he went, "Wow!" Chased that granny woman down the road. She run to a wolf's house. She busted through the door of the wolf's house, and the wolf said, "Hello, Granny. I remember you from some of them other books in the library." He started licking his lips. She said, "No, no, I didn't come for dinner. There's a gourd that's witched me. It's a beating me in my backside. I gotta get shed of it. I'm gonna hunker down behind the door to hide, and you get it when it comes in." So that old wolf tried, but that gourd come in and whapped him on the front feet, and that poor old wolf jumped up on his hind legs. Woo, he's a dancing a jig. Did you know the jig is the national dance of Ireland? Yeah, it is. You know where I learned that? From a book in the library. And that gourd chased that old granny down the road till she come to a big old bear's house. She busted through the door, and the bear said, "Well, Granny, what can I do for you?" And she said, "There's a gourd that's witched me. It's a beating me in my backside. I'm gonna hunker down behind the door and hide." And the bear said, "No, no, don't do that. The gourd'll be expecting it. Hide in the bed." So Granny jumped up in the bed, and she said, "Ooh, this bed's too hard." She climbed in another bed and said, "Ooh, this bed's too soft." She got in a third one and said, "Oh, this one's just right." And she pulled the covers up over her head to hide, and the bear hunkered down behind the door. Well, when the gourd come in, it wasn't expecting to find a bear behind the door, and the bear jumped out and sat down on that gourd and squashed it all to pieces. And that granny jumped out of the bed. She swept up them pieces of gourd and throwed them in the fire and burned them up. And she said, "Thank you, Mr. Bear. Thank you. You a kind neighbor to help me like that. Is there anything I could do for you?" And that old bear, he said, "I'd like to have me a tub of honey I could use to sweeten up my porridge." She said, "Oh, I can get you some honey, honey. Come on." They went back up the road a ways, and they met Mr. Wolf. She said, "Mr. Wolf, you a good neighbor trying to help me with that old gourd. Is there anything I could do to help you?" And that wolf said, "I'd like to have 3 little pigs I could eat for my supper." She said, "Oh, I can get you some pigs. Come on." They went on up the road a ways, and they come to Mr. Wildcat's house. She said, "Mr. Wildcat, I'm sorry that gourd beat you in the head, but you're a good neighbor and you tried to help me. Is there anything I could do for you?" And that Wildcat said, "Chicken." She said, "Oh, I'll get you some chicken. Come on." They went on up the road a ways. They come to the fox's house. She said, "Mr. Fox, you're a good neighbor, and I want to return the favor that you tried to do for me. What could I do to help you?" Mr. Fox said he wanted a duck he could wring by its neck for his supper. And then they passed by the groundhog's house. Oh, Lord, y'all should have seen that groundhog. He had caught that gourd when it had its full strength. He had a bandage on his head, and he had bandages wrapped around his middle, and he dumped liniment all over himself. That poor little groundhog looked aside. She said, "Mr. Groundhog, you a good neighbor. Is there anything I could do to help you?" And he said, I'd like to have me a sack of turnips. I'd fry them up for my supper." She said, come on, all y'all. I'm going to get everything you want." They walked up to the top of a mountain, and she pointed out, and she said, "Look over there, that over on that mountain meadow, that's land that owned by a farmer, and he's old Stingy Gut. He ain't never been a good neighbor to nobody, and he don't know how to share nothing, but I know he's gone off, and I'm going to let you go on his farm while he's gone and let y'all take anything you want." And all them animals, they said, no, we can't go on his place. He's got a big old dog, and that dog will bite us." She said, "That dog ain't going to be no trouble to you." And that old granny stuck her fingers in her mouth and whistled like a man. You know where she learned to stick her fingers in her mouth and whistle like a man? No, I know that's what you're thinking, but you got to Google that. So then, after she whistled like a man, all them critters watched that dog take off a-running. She said, "All right, it's clear. Go get what you want." And they climbed over the fence and run across that meadow, and here they come back. That bear was toting a big tub of honey he had robbed from the bee gums. And here come that wolf. He had 3 little pigs tucked up and under his arms. Here come that wildcat. He had something flopping by the feet, looked like a little red hen. He said, "Chicken." And here come that fox. He had got an ugly duckling and wrung its neck for his supper. And then here come that groundhog, dragging a sack of turnips 3 times the size he was. They all stopped off at the library and got cookbooks and went home and fried that mess up in a pound of butter. And that was the end of that.